Okay, so we were up to the bottom of Daf Tzadik Gimel Amud Beis, where the Gemara was discussing Davar Shalai B'La'olam, and the Gemara was discussing whether or not Kedushin is Toivus on a Yevama. So what happened was, Rabbi Yanai said, oh, I think I'm mistaken. I think we're Tzadik Beis Amud Beis.
Yeah, you're a daf ahead. That's today's daf.
I'm sorry, yeah. We're Tzadik Beis Amud Beis at the bottom. So what happened was Rabbi Yanai made a comment that Nimnu v'Gomer ein Kedushin Toishim b'Yevama. And Rabbi Yochanan thought to say that we have a riot to this from a Mishnah that said if someone went over to a woman and said, I want to marry you, Harayat Mekudeshes li, la'acher sheyachloitz leich Yevamech, einem Mekudeshes, we say it's not Mekudeshes. And the way Rabbi Yochanan understood the Mishnah was Vibalt Kedushin is not Toifus. The Chayve Lavin, Vibalt Kedushin, I'm sorry, I take that back. Vibalt Kedushin is not Toifus on the Yevama because of the way Rav understood the pasuk of Loisia Eishus and Mesa Chutza tells you that Loisa Hey Loch Havaya, Loisa Ba Havaya, there's no Tevisus Kedushin by a Yevama L'shul. So Rabbi Yochanan wants to bring a right to Rabbi Yanai from this Mishnah that says, if someone says you should be Mekudeshes to me, after your Yevama gives you a get, gives you a chalitza, so that proves that there's no Kedushin Toifsin by Yevama L'shon. So we're up to Amalei Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish said, I don't know if it's such a real raya, because he loved the culture, Gava Rabbah. If it wasn't for the fact that Rabbi Yanai complimented you, that what a great riot is from this Mishnah, Hav Aminalach, I might have learned the Mishnah with a completely different explanation that would completely neutralize your riot. Because I know Masnis and Rabbi Kiva, I would have said, really, normally Kedushin is Toifus. According to everybody, we would hold like Shmuel that Kedushin is Toifus on the Yevama L'shul. But there's one Mandomar who happens to hold that even Chayve Lavin, Kedushin aren't Toifsin, and that is Rabbi Kiva. And I would have said that this Mishnah is going according to Rabbi Kiva, to Omar ain't Kedushin Toifsin b'Chayve Lavin. And then you don't have any raya whatsoever from this Mishnah that there's something unique about a Yevama L'shuk, that there's no Tfisis Kedushin on it. Frank the Gemara, v'yi Rabbi Kiva, if it's going according to Rabbi Kiva, we have another problem, because Rabbi Kiva wasn't the one-trick pony. Not only did he hold in Kedushin Toifsin b'Chayve Lavin, he had other opinions about other halachas and shas. V'yi Rabbi Kiva, he amar lo la'achar sheyachloitz leich Yevamech, even if he said that I want to be mekadosh you today, for when after your Yevama gives you chalitza, litvisi ba'kedushin, it should work. Our Mishnah here that we quoted says eina mekudeshes, but Rabbi Kiva would hold yes mekudeshes. Dashmaina Rabbi Kiva to Amar Adam Makna Davar Shalai B'La'olam. Rabbi Kiva holds that a person is Makna Adavar Shalai B'La'olam. So even though this woman now is not marriage material, you could still marry her now. So you cannot say that Rabbi Kiva is the author of this Mishnah, because if Rabbi Kiva was the author of this Mishnah, all of these transactions would have been valid. So when it comes to the sugya of makna or eina the makna davar shaloi b'loilam, Rabbi Chanan has a clear as to what is the problem, whether or not we hold yesh makna davar shaloi b'loilam or ein makna davar shaloi b'loilam. Is it merely an issue of smichas das, meaning as a buyer, I don't really have real kavanah to be kaina. As a seller, I don't really have kavanah to sell something that's not here. It's a chesaron in smichas das. But if that's the surah, then there might be special factors that would create smichas das. For instance, if I made a shavua, if I swore that I want to make this transaction, there, maybe it would overcome the problem that there's no smichas das. Or the other side of the shaila that Rabbi Chanan has is maybe it's a structural problem. You physically can't have a kinyan, coin is something that's not here. So where does this come out a little bit? In the famous case of someone who sold a davar shaloi b'loilam when Esav sold his bechayra to Yaakov. He sold the bechayra, but there was no avodah yet at the base of Mikdash, so it was a davar shaloi b'loilam. So there are those who learn that that's why Yaakov told Esav, he demanded a shvuah, because on the tzad of the shaila, that the problem with in makna davar shaloi b'loilam is smichas das, the shvuah adds to it. But there are other shatim in how this works. There are those who hold, even if it's a structural issue, that eino the makna davar shaloi b'loilam, so Esav could not possibly have sold a bechayr which comes much later. There are those who learn siluk works differently. Can someone tell his friend, I'm moichel you any chayv that you're going to borrow from me, that you'll have. Even if you borrow from me next week $100, I'm moichel that chayv now. So there are those who learn that's a siluk. I'm removing myself from that claim. That, in fact, could be done on a davar shaloi b'loilam. Although I cannot be makni you something that's loy b'loilam, I could retract myself from any rights to something. So there are those who learn that you could be moichel a chayv even though the chayv had not yet been incurred. And that's what Esav was doing. Esav was just being misalik himself from the bechayra. So there are, in fact, different shatim as to what the lomdus of the transaction was between Yaakov and Esav, and it depends on how we learn what the problem is with davar shaloi b'loilam. So let's see the Gemara back to it. It's not we learned. Koinim shani oisa leficha. A woman says, I'm making a carbon, I'm asering bahana, any melacha that I do, you shouldn't be able to benefit from. So the halacha is ein tzarich lahafer. The husband doesn't even have to make a hafar. Why not, Rashi says? Because you cannot aser something that doesn't belong to you. And in this case, her ma'aseh yadayim are already mishubet to her husband for the exchange that he provides her with sustenance. Rashi's ein tzarich lahafer. Even the komishabda leila ma'aseh yadah. Therefore, leimotzi neodra. Rabbi Kiva Aimer Yofer. He should still be made for the nether, because I do agree with you. I do agree with you that whatever ma'aseh yadayim he's entitled to, she has no control over, and she can't even begin to make a nether. But we only consider normal income. We only consider normal income as what the husband gets. But let's say she opens up a company and it's called Amazon. Surely not all that money is meshubah to the husband. So therefore, it's up to Kiva Yofer Shema Tadif Alav Yoshim and Aroyullah. If she's able to produce, if she's able to earn more than what's typically included in what is shibud for the ma'aseh daimar, that's not included in the ma'aseh daim that he's entitled to. So that he would need to make a hafara for. So Rabbi Kiva says he should be made. So this is a typical example of a davar shaloi b'loilam, because the ma'aseh daim that she's going to produce eventually are clearly not b'loilam. Yet Rabbi Kiva says you still have to be made. So you see clearly that Rabbi Kiva holds a person could be makna a davar shaloi b'loilam. Zok Gemara, that doesn't prove that Rebbe Kiva holds a person can be makna davar shaloi b'loilam. There it's different. The case was she didn't just makna shemai daim, because in fact she wouldn't be able to, like you said, because ain't other makna davar shaloi b'loilam. Here speaking by Meres Yikdeshu Yodai Leisayim, she was makdish her hands, which are in existence right now. Yodayim isnu ba'alma. So this is like the famous case, the typical case, the flagship case of davar shaloi b'loilam is dekel l'peirosav. You can't sell peiros dekel that are going to come in the future, but you could sell the dekel for its peiros. I own the dekel, the gabi, the peiros that it produces. Where the achronim struggle is the peiros grow from the dekel. The ma'aseh daim don't grow from someone's hands. It happens to be malacha that people might do with their hands, and sometimes they're not even using their hands, they're just giving orders. Yet Yet the Gemara here is considering it like Dekel the Peroisov, that it's that whatever the seeds of the mice Yadayim that are going to be produced are here in existence now. So by Merish Yikachi Yodel is saying the Yadayim is Tubahom. Her hands are here. So in fact, we want to say that maybe Rabbi Kiva holds that and the example that we gave of Rabbi Kiva doesn't prove anything about Davar Shaloi B'La'olam, because maybe there the nether was structured in a way where it was a Davar Shabbat. And we're arguing on Rab Nachman Bar Yitzchak. The Gemara here, who's arguing that Rabbi Kiva holds Adam Ein Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam, is arguing on Rab Nachman Bar Yitzchak, who clearly said that the Shita of Rabbi Kiva is Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam. Rab Nachman Bar Yitzchak, Rav Huna said Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam Kerav, and he said it like Rav, who also said the same halacha. Rav Rabbi Yanai, and Rav said the same halacha like his Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai said this halacha for Rabbi Chia Kerabi, Rabbi Krab Meir Krab Elazar ben Yaakov, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Rabbi Kiva. So Amar Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam. This is an entire long list of Rebbe to Talmud, who all hold Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam, terminating with Rabbi Kiva or starting with Rabbi Kiva, who held Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam. So this shita that we said earlier, that wants to deflect the raya from Yofer Shemet Tadif, this shita clearly is not learning that it's speaking by Merish Yikachu Yodai Le'Isayim. Rather, the woman was actually being makdish from Malacha, from Yadayim of the future, which were a Davar Shaloi B'La'olam, but Rabbi Kiva holds that such a transaction will be valid. So now that we have a long list of Amayroim and Tanoim who held Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam, the Gemara is going to go through each one of these Amayroim and Tanoim one by one, showing where they express their opinion. Rav Huna Mai, Ditmar we learn. This is the flagship case of selling a Davar Shaloi B'La'olam. Someone told the payers that his decal will eventually produce to his chaver. Rav Huna said, everybody agrees up until the point where the pairs are actually in existence. Even if the kinyan works, you could be chayzer up until the pairs are in existence. But once the pairs come into existence, because the kinyan that he made prior is going to be a valid kinyan. Rab Nachman said, even when the pairs are here, the seller can say, I don't want to sell them because the mechir that he made earlier was not valid. So here you see Rav Huna expressed an opinion that Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam. However, Rab Nachman said, Medina, I would agree with you, Rav Huna, the Shamit v'achel loy mafkinan minei. Even if I hold someone can be chayzer, if the lekeach has already eaten those payers, we don't make the lekeach pay them back because we say that the moicher was moichel those payers. So now we've illustrated how Rav Huna holds that a person could sell a Davar Shaloi B'La'olam. Now we'll look at Rav. Rav Huna Rav. If someone told his friend, Sodazu Shani Lekeach, this field that I plan to buy, I'm going to be purchasing it in the future. When I purchase it, it will be sold to you from now. Kana, that type of mechira works. That's Rav's halacha. I'm selling a Davar Shaloi B'La'olam. I'm selling a property that I don't even own yet. There's a shaila in the Rishonim if the word me'achshav has to be inserted. Tosfos says it does, but many people hold it doesn't. Maybe only in certain cases. Zok to Gemara weiter. Rabbi Yanai Rab Chia. Rabbi Yanai holds like Rab Chia. Rab Chia also expressed an opinion that Adam Makna Davar Shaloi B'La'olam. Rabbi Yanai Havile Arisa. Rabbi Yanai Havile Arisa. Rabbi Yanai had a sharecropper. So Rabbi Yanai was a landowner, and he had someone working his fields, and the person who worked his fields would take a portion of the yield of the field. And every day, this Rabbi Yanai, every day he would bring a big basket of peiros to Rabbi Yanai's home. One Arab Shabbos, Nogale, it was late Friday afternoon, and the Oris did not yet show up. Now, what would Rabbi Yanai need to do with this peiros if he wants to use them for Shabbos? He'd have to separate Trumas and Maasros. Trumas and Maasros, there's an issue to Rabbanan not to separate Trumas and Maasros from peiros on Shabbos. So it's getting late, and Rabbi Yanai is afraid that the Oris is not going to make it before Shabbos, and he wants to somehow make sure that he'll be able to eat these delicious peiros when they arrive. So what did he do? Shokal asar mi peri debese alayu. He took other peiros that he had that were tevel, and he said, "These peiros that I have in my house that are tevel, they should be truma, they should be meiser on the peiros that eventually this fellow is going to bring to my house." So here there was again, it was a davar shalei b'leilim, it wasn't here yet. Also, the kamed Reb Chia. He came to Reb Chia to find out, did I do the right thing? Rabbi Yanai wanted to know if he did the right thing. Now the question here is, why was this considered a davar shalei b'leilim? So let's see what Rashi says. Rashi says, let's hear a little bit the Gemara Vayter, because Rashi comments on it a little bit later. Amalei, Reb Chia told his Talmud Rabbi Yanai, Shaper Avadita, you did great. The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, analyzing a pasuk spoken in the parsha of Trumas and Maasros. It says, Laman Tilmad, Liyira es Hashem Alekecha. You should learn the fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kol Hayomim, every day. And this is saying you have to fear zich properly with the halachas of Trumas and Maasros every day. What does every day mean to include? Zok Reb Chia, Reb Chia quotes the Brisa, darshaning the pasuk, Elu Shabbos v'Yom Tovim. You're supposed to engage in Trumas and Maasros on Shabbos and Yom Tovim. Exactly what does that mean? L'may hilchasa. What is the Torah trying to teach us with this pasuk? If the Torah is trying to tell you that even on Shabbos you're supposed to take Trumas and Maasros and then eat peiros, it's the mystery tiltal the Rabbanan. We said the only isser to be misak and peiros on Shabbos is the Rabbanan. I don't need a pasuk to tell me that it's mutter to do an isser the Rabbanan on Shabbos midaraisa. That doesn't make sense. Ella, what the Mishnah must be talking about, what the Brisa must be coming to teach us, lav ki hagavna, it must be a case where you're taking Trumas and Maasros on something before you even have it in your hands. So let's see how Rashi interprets what occurred over here. Lamai hilchasa. So let's actually go one Rashi before. Kol hayamim, elu yom tov v'shabbosos. Zok Rashi, havalame. The Torah is teaching us you should be in the habit of lihizayer shaloi levatel oinik Shabbos b'shvil tikkun hatevel. You should not be mevatel oinik Shabbos because of tikkun hatevel. You should make sure that you're misakin the tevel so you can enjoy the delicious peiros. So this Rashi is a very big yisodistic Rashi, because it sounds from this Rashi like the mitzvah of Oinik Shabbos is a mitzvah d'oraisa, because it's the pasuk directly telling us, make sure not to be mevatel Oinik Shabbos. That's an area of great controversy if Oinik Shabbos is d'oraisa. But from Rashi, it definitely seems to be that the mitzvah of Oinik Shabbos is d'oraisa. What specific action is the Torah instructing us to do? Why do I need the Torah to tell me that? Why do I need the Torah to teach this to me? Even if it's on Shabbos, you're still allowed to take Trumas and Maasros. On that, frankly, more pshita. I shouldn't need a pasuk to tell me that I can be mafresh Trumas and Maasros on Shabbos. Would the Torah need to tell me that there's a heter of muksa on Shabbos where there's no issue d'oraisa at all? So Zokt Rashi, hafrashus maasros b'Shabbos Einoi ela mishum shuvos. It's only an issa d'Rabbanan to be mafresh trumas and maises. So Rashi seems to say to this or tiltal tzmuksa. It seems like Rashi is just using tiltal d'Rabbanan as an example of what an issa d'Rabbanan is, because the issa is as tikun. The Tanan Elohein mishum shuvos. The following things are also on Shabbos d'Rabbanan. Loy magbiin trumas and maises. You're not allowed to be mafresh trumas and maises. The Maseches Beya. Where did the Torah ever tell us that tiltal is also, or maybe Rashi learns that the issue of being mafresh trumas and maises is merely muksa. But where did the Torah ever ask muksa? Muksa is not an issue d'oraisa. So why does the Torah have to address it that it's going to be mutter on Shabbos? So there must be another problem that the Torah is trying to teach us, that we're allowed to waive in order to be mekayim the mitzvah of Oynik Shabbos. To mutter la'aser al mashal loy bala oilam v'asad lavoi l'torach Oynik Shabbos. So it must be that the Torah is teaching us that you could even take off meiser on a davar shaloi bala oilam. That's what the pasuk is teaching us. So that's how Rashi learns is the chiddush of this pasuk. And Tosha says over here, "Mitach pirsha kontris mashma the itzrich leila melech mikra mishum davar shaloi bala oilam." It's mashma from Rashi. I would assume the reason why it's mashma from Rashi is because Rashi says so, black and white, that the pasuk is needed to tell you that you could be mafresh trumas and maises even though it's a davar shaloi bala oilam. Because shalari the mali shabbos is v'yom tov mishar yomim. Why do I need a pasuk dafka for Shabbos and Yom Tov? This chiddush of davar shaloi bala oilam is equally relevant on any day of the week. The Ri wants to learn that the chiddush of this pasuk here is da'asakra l'mishri Shabbos shaloi minamuk. There's a halacha that you're not allowed to be mafresh trumas and maisros using payers that you don't have. That's right here together with the payers that you're going to make into chulin. So I can't say that the box of tevel that I have here should be mesukin because I have a box of tevel in New York City, and that's going to become trumas and maisros to be mater the truma and tevel that I have here in Toronto. You're not supposed to do that. But the Torah is saying for Oynik Shabbos, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to say I'm being mafresh truma using the payers that I have in my house to be mesakin the payers that the Oris has in his basket that he's going to bring me later this afternoon. But Frank says, why would the Torah tell you to do that? From the Torah's perspective, you could just be mafresh on Shabbos when it comes. Since according to the Torah, you can just be mafresh trumas and maishes on Shabbos. Why would the Torah tell me to take off truma shalom and amukaf from payers that aren't right here, if according to the Torah there's a simpler solution? Even the Yachal Mat Shabbos v'yitram al min amukaf. So you're saying it's worse from a Shabbos perspective? Oh, so you're right on. Tosha's answer something very similar to that. That's a very good point. The Yishleimid Asakra, the Heicha the Yeshle Peres Biracheres, but Einle Biyadai, Ela Kadeshu the Shabbos. What happens if you cannot separate Minamukah? You know what? Because you have just enough payers in your house for Shabbos. If I make part of those Trumas and Maisros, I won't have enough for Shabbos. You have a Ma'aser Minayu, Gufayu, if I would actually take from the pairs that I have to be Misakin, the remaining pairs that I have a Botzer, I would not have enough. But therefore, Vishari Mishamonik Shabbos, La'aser Me'oisu Shalir Cheresh, Shalem and Amukah. That wasn't the character you gave. I was mixing it up with the Tosfos Yeshanim on Amar Aleph. Tosfos Yeshanim on Amar Aleph says differently. Tosfos says that maybe see what Tosfos says. I saw it somewhere that says that Afal PK, it's still a shtickle tircha on Shabbos to do it. So we're still better avoiding it. Oh, it is Tosfos. It's the end of Tosfos right here. It's the last 3 lines of Tosfos. Oidish Leimar, the Shari Litroim be'erev Shabbos Shalom Namukav, Kedei Shalo Yitztarach Litroyach ve'Litroim be'Shabbos T'cholza Oinik Shabbos. Which is what you said. It's a problem to make these tikkunim of pairs on Shabbos is the tircha. So it's better that the Torah was mater Shalom Namukav, which you can do erev Shabbos rather than have to be busy with it on Shabbos. So the question is, what is the pasuk referring to? Lafki hagavna. So according to Rashi, it's teaching you about Davar Shalom Ba'Olam. According to Tosfos, it's teaching you about Shalom Namukav. But Agavarcha, it's also Davar Shalom Ba'Olam. Amar Rei, to Rabbi Yana, I said, Rabbi Chia, I'm happy that you're giving me your vote of confidence, but I'm still afraid because I had a bad dream. For Kayin B'Chalma, I want to ask the Olam to finish the following pasuk for me. For Ha'ir Shushan. You said the Vaycha. Or Ha'ir Shushan? So I wanted to know where your mind was. Some people right away gravitate to the Nevoicha, and some people gravitate to the Tzahala V'Samecha. I hear. So you can hear the same words, and they can trigger in you one emotion or an emotion that's completely the opposite. So Rabbi Yana said, Rebbe, I'm not so sure that I did the right thing because I had a bad dream. For Kayin B'Chalma, they called out to me in a dream, Kana Rachutz, you're a broken reed. My love, how would I interpret broken reed? Hachikam really, based on where it's used in the pasuk. And the pasuk is referring to one of the malachim, one of the Goyish kings was calling out to the Jewish king who created an alliance, who created a pact with the king of Egypt. So they thought that together they'll be able to repel the enemy. And the Goyish king said, I forgot what his name was, Hine betachtalach, you created an alliance and you created yourself an insurance policy using what? Al Meshenes, on a stick, a leaning stick that you could lean on, Hakana Harat Tazeh. This broken reed, which is how he described Mitzrayim. You're not going to make it. What a stupid move. So he was taunting his enemy. So doesn't that indicate that maybe I made a mistake because they're calling me Kana Rotutz? So Rabbi Chia answered back to Rabbi Yana, no, that's not what Kana Rotutz mean. You have to go to Va'ir Shushan Tzahal V'Samecha. Hachikra Milach. Referring to Melech HaMashiach, who's just, who won't lean on and pressure people who are weak. Kana Rotutz Lo Yishbar. He will never break a bent reed. Upish Tekeya Lo Yichben. And he won't put out a weak flame. So Adrabah, it was a good sign that you heard, which opens up a whole new sugya. Since when does one paskin shilas based on a dream? Rabbi Yana wanted to say, since I had a bad dream, it's a riot that the halach is wrong. So they actually speak about the Achrayim talk about how you could use dreams to paskin halachas. I guess so. But you see, even Rabbi Yana and Rabbi Chia had an argument about what his dream meant. Okay. Zok to Gemara Vayter. Rebbe, where does Rebbe express an opinion regarding the Shaila of Dover Shlem? Adam Detanya. Loi Sasker Eved al Adoinot. The pasuk says Loi Sasker Eved al Adoinot. I think Pasuk shot of the pasuk is that if you capture a land and some of their slaves escape and run from them to you, you shouldn't send them back to their owners. You should retain them and keep them. And the logic is they'll give you military secrets. They'll be loyal to you because through you they're acquiring their freedom. So, right. So what did Canada do? We took him in, of course. Yeah. Rebbe says that it's referring to something else. It's if you go to an Eved and say, I'm going to buy you from your Adon, so you really go to the Adon, I'm buying this Eved, I'm going to ask that he should be free as soon as I'm a shachar him. Once again, that's a transaction. I can't free him before I own him. Nevertheless, it works. What was the case? When I buy you, so once again, you see an expression where a double shaloi b'laylam works. Reb Meir, this is the brisa that we just learned yesterday. Or lachesh gairi. So here, there's a new level of davar shaloi b'loilam, because it's one thing if the item that you're selling or buying is a davar shaloi b'loilam, but here, if someone says, "I want to be mekadosh you after I become a ger," you yourself is a davar shaloi b'loilam. The buyer is a davar shaloi b'loilam, which Akiva pointed out yesterday is a much greater chiddush. It's one thing that you could buy something that's aloi b'loilam, but if you aren't b'loilam at all, how could you buy something? And that's what Tosfos kashi here. Tosfos asks him, "Taimar, Damar Perkama, Afidu Reb Meir, Damar Adam Makta Davar Shaloi B'Loilam, Hanimid L'Davar Shab'Loilam, Aval L'Davar Sheini B'Loilam." But a guy who's not Jewish yet, how could you say that you could be kind of? Oh, that's what Tosfos answers. So Zok Tosfos, the Lechashav L'Achesh Esgayer Loi B'Loilam Kol Kach Kivin Shaguf Hu B'Loilam Rak Shemechusar Geris. Exactly what Duffy says, it's merely a status change. Okay, what other cases are there?
Even if he has a star from things, even if he has a star that is going to be free March 1st. Not like he's
We're talking about a guy. We're talking about a guy who's Makadosh a woman.
Or an Evan.
Okay.
Or an
Right,
Evan.
or
But
an
he
Evan,
has
right.
a star. It's not like he's fantasizing, one day when I'm Jewish. Says March 1st, I'm going to the mikveh.
You're saying that, or you saw that
I'm
somewhere?
asking.
No. He can even say he's fantasizing.
No, there's a difference. The guy's fantasizing, or is he?
No, even in such a case.
In such case, we have
if
a
he's-
star with a specific date.
Well, there for sure it'll work. But even not, it will work. According to the Mandam hold other Makadav Shalom B'Olam, it'll
So
work
that
even if he
even
doesn't have a
working
star.
in his fantasy.
It's not fancy. He maybe has reason to believe that he's going to get free.
He's sitting there in the deep south in 1820 picking cotton. He ain't getting free.
I hear.
Who's the No, but if he has a star that is coming out, what I'm saying is a star.
So let's move on. Lachesh and Shachri, or Lachesh Yevamos by Lecha. He goes over to the woman and says, "I want to marry you after we killed your husband." Or Lachesh Tamas Achesecha. I want to marry you after we kill your sister, who happens to be my wife, by the way. Or Lachesh Yachleitz Loch Yevamech. Or after your Yevama gives you a chalitza, which is the brisa we had, Einam Mekudeshes, which is the brisa we quoted yesterday, but Reb Meir Einam Mekudeshes. So this is an example of where Reb Meir holds Adam Makdav Shalom B'Olam. Reb Elazar ben Yaakov the Tanya, yes, Alkein Omar Reb Elazar ben Yaakov. Reb Elazar ben Yaakov said a greater chiddush. Afilu im Omar Peres Arugazu Telushin Yiyu Truma Al Peres Arugazu Mechubarim. I had rows of pears, and one row was already harvested. The other row wasn't. I could even say that these harvested pears should be truma on these pears that aren't fully grown yet. Or I say that these pears that are still growing should be trumas and maasros on these pears that are already harvested. When they are considered fully grown or fully grown enough that you could be mafish from them. So right now they're not even grown yet. They're not there yet. They have a strong potential to reach there, but they're not there yet. Right now they cannot be used for trumas and maasros. I'm declaring now that when they'll be royal the trumas and maasros, the transaction should work. The hitlishu, the shlish, and then eventually that happened. The nitlishu, and they were eventually harvested. Dvar kayom. Another example of other Makdav Shaloi B'Olam. And finally, for the star to show, Rabbi Akiva, the Tnan, Kodim Shani Oisa Lepicha, the same raya we brought on Amar Aleph, Eine Tzarech Lahafer, but Rabbi Akiva Omer Yafer, you still have to make a hafara because she might overproduce. Shema Tadev Halav Yosim in a royal. Maybe this wife will produce more than what's typically included in the marriage contract, where her ma'aseh dime go to the husband, and whatever she produces over and above that belongs to her and not to her husband. So for those monies, Rabbi Akiva held that he could be mefer, because the nether would be a good nether. And unlike on Amar Aleph, we explained it, where she said, "I'm being makdish my own hands," which are davar shabal olam, this opinion holds that she was maklish to actual ma'aseh yadayim, which are not yet in existence, but Rabbi Kiva holds adam makla davar shaloi bala, which takes us to the end of this sugya, and now we're going back and opening up the sugya that we learned before about the nemonos of an erech. They asked the following question of Reb Sheshes. Now we already know that if an erech comes along and says that someone died, will allow his wife to get married based on that testimony. What about will we let a woman do evil? What is the law if an erech comes to be mater a yevama? So what did he say? So Rashi tells us, what is he saying? Either shemeis baila kadesh nisyapi. The erech is saying your husband died and therefore you could do evil. Can we allow her to do evil? We believe the aid to say that the husband died, but that's because of a heteraguna. For a heteraguna, we don't want a woman to be locked up. We believe the erech. But would we even allow her to marry her husband's brother, which is a chiv kares, and we're letting her marry, even though she's potentially an Eshes Ish, would we let her also marry the Yavam? Now, I hear. So the Gemara analyzes it this way. Time of the reason why an Eirechad is believed to allow a woman to get married l'shuk is mishum the milsa davida legluye loy mishaker. Since this is something where the Eirechad is not going to lie about, because it's going to the emes is going to come out. If the Eirechad is is fabricating this story that the man died, he's going to be very exposed. The fellow's going to show up. And if that's the reason, then the hachanami loy mishaker. Here too, the Eirechad that's telling her that her husband died so she can do yibam, he's not going to lie either, because he's not going to lie when he knows he can be easily caught. Is that the reason why? Is that the reason why we let her go free? Or maybe time of the Eirechad mishum the daiku mitzvah. It's not because of the Eirechad. The Eirechad maybe is prompts an investigation, but the real investigation that we're relying upon is her investigation. So if it's just a regular woman, we're being mater l'shuk, then before she gives up her husband and looks for another mate, she's going to really analyze it clearly. But v'hacha, even this in the rachmalei, from time to time you find where she has the hots for her brother-in-law, and that's going to skew her investigation. And loy daiku mitzvah. So therefore, there might be a problem. So the question is, what is the primary namanis with which we allow a normal woman to get married, and does that apply here? So Tosfos asks right away. The Gemara already said many times it's all about daiku mitzvah, and that's why we cancel her. That's why she's shy. If we're relying on the Eirechad, why are we sanctioning her when a mistake happens? The fact is, what is the question? Havadai taima the Eirechad mishum the daiku mitzvah. Didn't we just learn several blood that talk about the sanctions, and it's all about her during the analysis? So the Re gives a nice explanation. The reason why we rely on her investigation is it because mishum the avida lugluyehu, because this is something that the truth is going to come out. And the main reason why there's an amonis is because everything is going to become clear one day. And therefore will rely on even her limited investigation. When she likes her brother-in-law, she's going to limit her investigation. But we'll rely on that limited investigation because we're leaning heavily on the aide who's going to say the truth because he's going to be discovered. So therefore, she's not going to look in it too well because she's hoping that he's going to pass the scrutiny. The main reason why we believe the Eirechad has nothing to do with the nemanis of the Eirechad at all. Rather, it's mishum the daika. We're completely relying on her investigation. If that's the case, then we can't rely on a light investigation. It's got to be we need a very heavy investigation, a deep investigation. Even the Meracham alei lo'daika kulahai. So at the end of the day, Dr. Tosfos, the question is: sure, you need daiko mitzvah, and if not, you get sanctioned. But what's doing the heavy lifting in the heter? Is the heavy lifting being done by the woman's investigation? And then in the case where we have reason to believe that she won't investigate because she wants to do yibum, she likes her brother-in-law, we can't rely on it. Or maybe the heavy lifting is the erechad, which is here anyway. So Amalu Rab Sheshes Tenisua. I think you have a Pasha Teraya from the Mishnah we just learned. Amrullah, they told her, Meis Bincha, first your son died, the Achagach Meis Bailach, and then your husband died, which means she's Mechuyev in Yibum. V'Nesyab, she did Yibum, which is the case of our Mishnah. The Achagach Amrullah Chilaf Advar. And then they told her that in fact, first her husband died, and then her son died. She was not Mechuyev in Yibum, and she should never have married her brother-in-law. So the halach is Teitzei, V'Avlad Rishon V'Achan Mamzer. She has to divorce from her brother-in-law, and if a child was born, that child is a mamzer. So what is precisely the details of this case? Ilemo treyu trey. If originally two Adam came and said that her son died first, and then two Adam came and said, in fact, that her husband died first, my chazos the samchas ahani, smay chahani. Why would you rely on one pair of Adam more than you rely on the second pair of Adam? Zok Tosfos, my chazos the samchahani, even though treu trey is a sveka d'Rabbanon, so therefore, before her husband died, she was usher to marry her brother-in-law. So if you have treu trey, let's just let the chazaka, which existed before any Edom got involved, take rule, which says she may not marry the Yevamos. So what's the Gemara's kasha? My chazad samchani. The reason why we want to trust Adam who says she must get divorced is because the Chazaka says she must get divorced. Omari, Heicha de Yavam, Aimer Barley, if he says, the Yavam himself says, the brother-in-law himself says, I am sure that my sister-in-law needed Yibum, he Aimer is Barley, and she also says, I'm 100% sure that my son died first. There, we won't use the Chazaka to force him to divorce her. Midi the hava and this is la'echad meder reish pirkin. When there's a suffix, but the subject themselves is clear, there they can follow their own conscience. V'oit suffix mamzerhu. Why does the Mishnah say the child's a mamzer? The mamzer is a suffix. V'oit mamzer suffix mamzerhu. It's not a real mamzer. It's a suffix mamzer. V'chitem elaydok. And if you want to say that when the Mishnah says mamzer, it's not being precise, it means a suffix mamzer, I don't think so. Because in the other case of the Mishnah, you see the Mishnah is precise. But midikatani say for rishon mamzer, v'acharon ena mamzer, shmami nedavka katani. You see that the Mishnah is being precise. Elav shmamino. It must be that there were no two Edom initially allowing her to do yibum. It was only Chad. Only one Ed came along and said that first her son died, and then her husband died, and now she can do yibum. The time it also by trade, akashua. And the only reason why we make her get divorced is because later on two Edom came, which are makash to one Ed from before. If it wasn't for the fact that two Edom came, we allowed her to do yibum based on the testimony of the one Ed. So you have a very clear ayah from our Mishnah that one Ed is believed even to allow her to do yibum, not just to say that she's no longer an Eshish. That's not even a question. She doesn't even need Eid Echad to be mad to her. She herself is never to do yibum. It's not we learned. Ha'isha she'amar meis baili, a woman who on her own testimony said, my husband died. Tina say she can get married. If she said meis baili, my husband died, tisya bein, she can do yibum based on her own testimony. The law is she's believed on her own testimony. The whole question that we have is lamishri yevamo la'alma. The question is to allow her to marry somebody else. Rashi says, Eid achad matira l'shuk she'omer la meis yevamach. What happens if she says my husband died, or she knows her husband died, she's aiding that her husband died, but she knows she's zakuk yibum because her brother-in-law is still alive, and an Eidechad came along and said, your brother-in-law died. Or an Eidechad comes along and says, or your son survived your husband, so therefore you're part of a mibum. The question is, do we believe in Eidechad to say that she's part of a mibum? My time up. Why do we normally believe in Eidechad? If it's Mishum David, Milsa David Legluya, Lemishaker, Hakadam Lemishaker, Adel Matami Eidechad, Mishum Didaku Mitzvah, Vaha, this woman who wants to go free and does not want to do Yibum, so she wants to believe the aid that says that her brother-in-law died, so she doesn't have to do Yibum, Loy Daiko Mitzvah. There's a svart to say that she won't check into his words that her brother-in-law died because she wants to believe that her brother-in-law died. You know why? The misnahu the sonile. She hates him. So we have to look at both cases. Sometimes we're afraid she wants to marry him, but sometimes we're afraid she hates him. So therefore, that is the shaila. So I love this last stickle because Tosfos goes on to a long tirade as to why it's more likely that a woman would hate her brother-in-law a lot more than she would love her brother-in-law. But he also says that it creates a lot more stress for her. If she might have to leave him, she's locked into him. So she's locked into him. She's trapped and she's completely controlled by him. That's a real problem. That will freak her out. That will want to make her lie. But on the other side, Rachamale doesn't really convince her to do anything. Because even if she has the hots for him, she doesn't know if he has the hots for her. She doesn't know if he'll give her a chalitza. So therefore, this is a much stronger svara. If she feels she's going to get trapped by her brother-in-law, she's much more likely to not investigate him thoroughly and accept that her brother-in-law died so she can marry somebody else. So let's stop here and we'll pick up on this tomorrow. Everyone should have a wonderful, successful day.